This is a topical one. This was sent in to CornyDriveThru at gmail.com from Jacob Cordell. What does Jim think about this quote from Cody Rhodes after he was asked if he was a heel or a babyface?
Oh, boy.
Here's the quote from Twitter. I'm neither. I'm a competitor and a reigning champion. Tired old tropes are even more insulting to the viewer, considering I've been on their TV since I was 20. It ain't black and white. It hasn't been in forever. Circumstances of the match dictate who we cheer for. Beautiful thing. So what are your thoughts on Cody Rhodes? And this is not the first time we've seen it. By the way, another tired old trope is Cody Rhodes using the term tired old trope every time this comes up. But what are your thoughts on Cody Rhodes' opinions?
If it's related to wrestling, shouldn't it be a trope?
That's funny.
I'm just wondering, from now on, if it's wrestling, if it's related to wrestling, it needs to be a tired old trope. You know, there is a glimmer down there in what he's saying of sense and logic, and I'll tell you what it is. In the days when professional wrestling as an industry had all agreed that they were not going to fucking blab about every little fucking secret and not laugh at their own business, and it was treated and presented as a sport, you had the guys, the good workers, the great workers, who could carry either a match as either a babyface or a heel, depending on the circumstance, because they were a champion defending. And those folks were called the NWA World Heavyweight Champion. And whether it was Jack Briscoe or whether it was Dory Funk Jr. or whether it was Pat O'Connor was much more babyface-ish than he was heel. And Buddy Rogers was more heel than he was babyface. And Lou Thez was the epitome of a guy like this, that he was neither heel nor babyface. He was the fucking guy that everybody wanted to take down. And that works. When you have a product that is presented as a sport, when you have one guy with the focus is on as a champion that takes on all comers, that's wrestling in that position and that style. And then you could even open it up a little bit in the old territory days where the whole country didn't see everything that was going on. And you could have another one or two of those guys around as regional champions in different places if they were established. And yes, most of the time they would be honorable, but when they wrestled a really hot babyface, they would do subtle things in the match. They might pull trunks. They might not break quickly. They might give a fucking elbow shot to the fucking side of the head on the break, or they might take a cheap win or a shortcut or whatever because they had to, in that instance, to beat that guy. And that's what he's talking about. We are a long way away from the time, and he is in a company that's a long way away from presenting anything like a sport. That's number one. Number two, it doesn't work when you're the TV champion. If he was the world champion, which I actually think he still should be, Cody should be the champion if it ain't Jericho. I don't know why they got it on fucking Stone Cold Cosplay. But when you're one of a number of champions and they've got bigger booking issues than the fine points of Cody's psychology. The point is, there's things that Cody, even in a situation where what Cody's trying to do by being the neither, he's a babyface, but he's going to take a few shortcuts when somebody pisses him off or riles him up or he feels put upon. But there's still things that person would never do. Cody would never just full on, for no reason, kick a guy in the balls or fucking steal something from him, unless it was retribution, or assault the guy's wife and dry hump her. That's not something Cody Rhodes would do. That means he is a babyface. He's just a babyface that doesn't mind fucking breaking some rules if he's pissed off, which is basically Hacksaw Jim Duggan. You need fucking baby faces and heels because of the nature of what wrestling is supposed to be. The idea that you are seeing two people have a fight that have a firm dislike for each other, if not an outright hatred, and they're having a fight or a match or a contest or whatever you want to call it, see who's going to win. Therefore, the fans, to be especially interested in it, need to have somebody to cheer for or somebody to root against. There has to be some strong feeling, which is why Vince McMahon Sr. never wanted to do a babyface match. Because what's the upside? Who do they want to see win, Bruno or Pedro? They don't want to see either one of these guys lose, which is why they did a draw. And also business-wise, how the fuck do you do that finish? In those days, your ethnic hero had to be an ethnic hero and undefeated. But also, he didn't think there would be strong interest. And he got proven right, even though it was bad weather, when he went outdoors and drew 2,000 people more than Madison Square Garden would have seated. You got to have somebody to cheer for, and you got to have somebody to boo. You got to have some strong emotional investment. I want to see that guy get his ass kicked, or God, I want to see that guy get even. So, there doesn't have to be a baby face and a heel in every single match. You can have the wrestling matches, although they seldom do. The Timothy Thatcher, Oney Lorcan matches on the card to make wrestling look good. And you can have some nice exhibitions every now and then, but as a general rule, it's easier to have the match, it's easier to enjoy the match, it's easier to understand the match, and it's easier to sell tickets for the match if people give a shit one way or another about who wins or who loses. It may still, one more thing, it may still be old-fashioned today when nobody gives a shit about that anyway because they're just watching a goddamn, Cirque du Bolshoi routine. But it does help when you actually have a real good match and get the people. And Cody should know that because he's the only one in AEW that consistently has real good matches and gets the people. Go ahead.
Well, I think Cody spends too much time trying to get himself over as the wrestling sage, which is just complete nonsense.
Well, he needs more parsley, rosemary, and thyme.
But you can't look at FTR and AEW and not tell me that if they had come in as strong heels, it wouldn't have been more effective.
Oh, good God! Of course. We'll watch the watch along, and we'll let the people of Houston decide here in a little while. But if you come in as strong anything, it's a positive. They didn't come in as strong. They came in as strong shit, and they got their shit stolen and helped out by their big rivals and fucking blown off when they offered somebody a beer in the first 2 weeks. So fuck you.
All right. Well,
you know what? I don't know what to think when I hear people say these things. They don't, babyface and heels. Cody Rhodes is saying the same thing that Vince Russo was saying 20 years ago. And it didn't make any more sense then when Shitstain said it as it does now. Oh, there's shades of gray. Yeah, shades of gray is shades of don't give a fuck. And all you do and Shitstain was bad at this. I'm not saying that Cody or anybody else is anywhere near this bad. But when you have a guy who is any creation of any creative person, a character in a novel or a character person in a movie or whatever, or in wrestling, you have to have in mind that they don't do shit that person wouldn't do. Suddenly, if Bruno Sammartino had stood in front of Pedro Morales and instead of shaking hands and saying, okay, now we're going to wrestle, he'd have just hauled off and kicked Pedro in the balls, it would have been shocking, but it wouldn't have got over because nobody would have fucking believed it. People in wrestling, the characters, the gimmicks, whatever in wrestling still have to do things that person, the fans think that person would do that or he wouldn't. When Steve Austin hugged Vince McMahon, that killed the fucking whole deal because people that Steve Austin would not do that. So there's some people you couldn't turn heel. They were so babyface and it just killed them off, or vice versa. And Shitstain was always big on the swerves by having a bunch of guys that were over, then turning around and doing something that they blatantly would not do. If they were the person that they had been presented as and were purported to be, they wouldn't do that. It was all just for a swerve, and that's where the people tuned out. Because he didn't understand that it's still, the people take you as either a fucking nice guy or a prick, and you have to amplify those fucking qualities to get over strongly in one direction or another. And once you do, if you get over like that, then if you do something that that person that you're over as wouldn't do in the fan's mind, then you've just made it fucking bogus and fake, and that don't get over. So everybody has to be a baby face or a heel. It's just whether they're good at it or not. And if you're just in the middle and you do shit back and forth, nobody gives a fuck about you anyway.